Coming up, two short stories as told by you. To put it mildly, the community I grew up in was rustic. That's a nice way of saying rough. Just farmland, crops, dilapidated churches, and dilapidated, unsightly houses. All around us was in pretty bad shape. The annual property taxes were about $1,000 max. That was paired with a ton of oddball characters. Hell, our neighbor was just as strange. Nice, yet strange. We weren't wealthy ourselves. But when my siblings and I reached working age, things for our family at least slightly improved. I met this girl Kelly many years ago and we had a brief relationship. It was late summer when we met. September had already passed when we last saw one another. The month of October was already upon us. Kelly and I wanted to go on a pleasant, inexpensive date. There wasn't really anything to do in that area. You've eaten, explored, and gone on treks. Today we drove a different path. We went to this little restaurant we saw that had outside seating and was parked in a weird spot by the side of the road. When we got there, it was a warm, overcast day, and we were seated outside the restaurant. After we left, the area became visibly foggy. We kept driving in the same direction. We had never been around this way before, an extremely lonely route. With sporadic pockets of woods and trees, the landscape is primarily made up of open fields and farms. We approached a sign, very poorly made sign advertising a pumpkin patch. It wasn't a large billboard or any such structure. It was a wooden picket sign with an arrow pointing right that read, "Pumpkin picking this way." We saw a dirt driveway that went through the field directly behind the sign. We drove off the road down the driveway and past the house into this back area that was covered in trees in different directions, on the left side and the far back side, after seeing a house through the field that the driveway led to. At that moment, we both decided we wanted to check it out because, well, why not? But there was this large pumpkin patch between the home and the woods. It was a real farm, all right. We were able to see the hundreds of pumpkins that were strewn all over the place. We parked close to the only other vehicle visible on the site, an old jalopy pickup truck. An elderly couple was seated on the house's rear deck. You could just about make them out through the fog. The two of them stood up to meet us as we stepped outside. I mentioned that we were here to pick pumpkins, and the elderly woman grinned in response. "Feel free to choose anything you desire." When I asked her how much a pumpkin would cost, the elderly woman replied that it was free. Are you shocked? There was a sort of barrier created by the fog, making it difficult for us to view the two. It was somewhat unsettling. The old man appeared to be grinning at Kelly, as far as I could tell. He had a really fake smile. It was somewhat repulsive. After exchanging gratitude, we both entered the pumpkin patch. Some of the pumpkins were mushy or on the smaller side and not very pretty to look at. I suppose the fog left the ground somewhat damp and some of the pumpkins felt dirty and wet as well. In the end, we were able to locate one, though it wasn't easy. This large, healthy-looking pumpkin was weighty as I took it up. I took it to the rear deck with the elderly couple, but they had moved on. Since we had previously thanked the couple, and they had explicitly stated that they were free to go, it probably felt very obvious that we could leave. As we were leaving, we heard someone yelling outside, so we got back in the car and I started to make a three-point turn in that dirt driveway. It faced the home, where we observed a middle-aged man wearing a cap shouting at someone to halt. When I lowered the window, he exclaimed, "What the hell are y'all doing?" and stuck his face through it and into my car. "I'm calling the police." "What did we do?" I asked, and he ordered, "Remove that pumpkin immediately." Speaking over each other, Kelly and I attempted to clarify to the man that the older couple had instructed us to take whatever we desired. They looked like his parents to me. The man asked, "Which elderly couple are you talking about?" "I do not have any parents." Looking at each other, equally perplexed, Kelly and I said, "Sir, 10 minutes ago, there was an elderly couple seated on your back porch. He instructed us to take anything we desired. There aren't any elderly couples here, the man added. Indeed, where were they? The man ordered us to remove the pumpkin. He threatened to shoot us if we returned here. He then turned to walk back to his house after spitting on the ground. As we drove from that place, we were very bewildered. We entertained the notion that he was a practical joker. That must have been it. He was pulling a stunt of some sort. It'll be a real sick joke. Then I joked saying, what if they were ghosts? Kelly said, stop, clearly freaked out. And I got the chills myself as I thought about what I just said. There was a little period of silence in the car, and I'm sure we both thought about that. My two siblings visited that pumpkin farm one day out of curiosity. They inquired about the property and whether anyone else lived there when they bought a pumpkin from the man we saw. The man said that he is the only resident. Hearing this was unnerving. It really doesn't make any sense at all. Had he been telling lies regarding the presence of the elder couple? Maybe not, I'm not sure. However, why? The most concerning query is, what if he wasn't lying? He really does live by himself. Who were those people?
It was the back end of October. One of my closest friends, Connor, asked whether I would be okay with visiting his place later when I woke up. It was lunchtime on Saturday. At the time, I was a high school student, so I hung out with friends most weekends. He was at home alone himself with one of his elder sisters, Chantel, while my friend's parents were out of town. Chantel was supposed to be looking after Connor. After knowing that, all he's asking is for me to come over and celebrate. I had no obligations such as work to worry about, so I accepted the invitation. I made my way to his place. We began discussing the usual topics like Call of Duty, schools, sports, girls, and other things. Finally, he mentioned the possibility of attending a Halloween party with several of our high school classmates. I needed some persuasion to be on board with the plan, as I was initially apprehensive. Not that I'm an introvert or anything. That night didn't feel like a celebration. In an attempt to be a nice buddy, I agreed to attend since Connor was itching to go. I questioned him about obtaining any Halloween-related stuff. He had 2 shirts for security personnel that we could wear and use as a minimal Halloween costume. We spent a couple more hours playing Xbox until it was 10:30. Connor shouted upstairs to Chantel that we were leaving, as if she cared anyway. After putting on our clothing, we left. We arrived at a Halloween-decorated home where music was playing after a brief 5-minute stroll. As we walked past the decorations, the loud music we had been listening to hit us hard. The place was filled with perhaps 70 other high school students who were raving and chatting in groups. With a typical high school party, that is. After a few minutes, I had already lost Connor when I passed Dino, one of my baseball friends, who I didn't see much of that year. He arranged some of my teammates and other friends in a circle and set me down on the couch. We spent several hours together, engaging in activities at parties or laughing at recollections that were brought up in conversation. It was wearing me out, not at all in it. I knew it was time for me to head home and spend the night sleeping. I searched the house for Connor. There was a girl he was making out with in the kitchen. Unintentionally interrupting him, I asked him if it would be okay if I returned to his place and went to bed. The girl he was speaking to requested if I might go grab some drinks from the basement. I agreed, as Connor said he would remain a little while longer. I realized that I just interrupted their talk. It was the least I could do. I quickly located the basement, unlocked the door, and descended the poorly lit steps. I staggered down the final steps and slammed into the refrigerator. A man's voice from behind me made me jump as I opened it. I leaped and raised my hands, turning to face the direction where the voice was heard. A tall, attractive man in his 30s stood behind me, grinning. A startling movement of his hands. What on earth is that for? Laughing, he introduced himself as the party host's cousin. I wasn't even thinking about why he was alone in a dark cellar because I was so lost in thought. Upstairs, there was a huge party with loud music going on. The man made an awkward attempt to strike up a conversation, but I told him I had to get my friend some drinks. To be honest, I'm quite talkative and gregarious with strangers when I'm feeling that way. But I wasn't feeling that vibe. I did everything in my power to flee. "Nice to meet you," he blurted as he turned to face the creaking steps. I said my farewell to my friends and left the party. then strolled back to Connor's place as the neighborhood's lights and Halloween decorations illuminated the street. It didn't really matter though, because the trek took no more than 5 minutes. As I traveled, I thought about that strange conversation I had with that man. I was unable to get rid of the strange aura he gave off. The more I thought about it, the stranger it seemed to me. I arrived at Connor's residence in the end. It was pitch black. Chantel wasn't home. Her car wasn't on the driveway. I went straight to the basement to sleep, not even bothering to put on some lights. Go down there and collapse on the sofa. And for about 15 minutes, I slept like a baby. Until I heard something crash upstairs. That really got me awake. I tried to listen for anything else, but I got no response. I went back to sleep, thinking I was hearing things. I'm not sure how much time has gone since I heard the crash above me. I could hear the creaking sound of floorboards as though someone was stepping on them. It was much too hefty to be either Chantel or Connor, as I had assumed. I took my phone out, texted him to find out if he had returned home. I tried to listen as I fixed my gaze on the ceiling. The basement door sprang open. Someone walking down the stairs, I heard. I glanced in the direction of the stairs. Standing there, softly lit by the stairlight, I spotted the man I'd seen at the party earlier. I prayed that the man would simply go away and tried not to make any noise. A few moments later, he turned at random, walked silently out of the cellar, and shut the door. Thankfully, he hadn't seen me. I grabbed my phone and I called 911. I told them what was going on. I told them about the man. I waited for them in the basement patiently, tried to open the windows. The man had been standing at the basement entrance earlier, but now it was locked shut and I had nowhere to go. The police arrived and arrested him. He was found crouched behind Chantel's bed. After arriving home, she was preparing for bed. Just as she was about to climb in, she heard the police below banging on the front door. I don't know what he was hoping to accomplish, but he obviously followed me home. The entire ordeal is quite unclear. Simply put, I'm relieved that events transpired as they did. The man was seen by the police watching security footage from nearby homes. He had followed me home, but he lost me when I turned the corner into the cul-de-sac. In the end, he worked on Chantel while observing her exit her car and enter the house. He then crept through the back door and around the rear.
If you like short, spooky horror stories, why not like and subscribe?